It was the summer of 2007. At a hotel in Italy, guests started arriving in the early evening. The location was kept secret, and security was extremely high. People were dressed in the most expensive fashions. There was plenty of gourmet food. Expensive liquor and fine wine flowed. Everyone was in high spirits. Then the lights dimmed, and Canada's Nelly Furtado stepped on stage. Although she was very busy touring and promoting an album called Loose, she made time for this performance. I mean, who could turn down $1 million for a 45-minute private set at a luxury property in front of what she assumed was a room of very powerful, very influential, and obviously very rich people? So, easy money, right? It was less than a gig than an all-expenses-paid mini-vacation. The evening went off without a hitch. She collected her cash and went about her business. But what she didn't know is that she was paid with blood money, profits from massive corruption and the oppression of an entire country by a family of international terrorists. Nelly Furtado was far from the first person to be duped into such a performance. A surprising number of A-listers have found themselves performing for some of the worst people in the world. Some of these artists were horrified when they learned the truth. Others just shrugged, cashed the checks, and accepted further gigs. I'm Alan Cross, and this is episode 52 of Uncharted Crime and Mayhem in the Music Industry. This is the inside story of playing gigs for dictators, oligarchs, and criminals. This is one of the hits Nelly Furtado played that night in Italy. The crowd loved it. The hotel ballroom erupted in applause. But who exactly was doing the clapping? Neither Nelly nor her people had any idea. It all seemed perfectly legit. She thought no more of it for 4 years. Then, in 2011, a civil war broke out in Libya, inspired by the first uprisings of the Arab Spring in neighboring Tunisia. Muammar Gaddafi, the murderous dictator and sponsor of terrorism, including the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988, was overthrown in a violent coup. Many people were killed on both sides. There were war crimes, the use of child soldiers, and accusations of ethnic and religious cleansing. Gaddafi and his forces steadily lost ground. Libya became even more of an international pariah, and even his staunch allies, Russia and China, abandoned him. On October 20th, 2011, he was captured while hiding inside a drainage pipe. He was tortured and shot. His corpse was put in a freezer of a grocery store and then put on public display 4 days later. He was then buried in a secret location in the desert. As all this was happening, stories about the Gaddafi regime started coming out. Many of his 10 children were as brutal as their father and loved their excess and luxury. They were arrogant and dismissive of anything that got in their way. And they had all the money in the world, perhaps as much as $200 billion. That included money to rent a hotel ballroom in Italy and to hire Nelly Furtado to perform. When it came out that Nelly had received $1 million for that private show in 2007 for the Gaddafi clan, specifically organized by his children, she was horrified. In February 2011, she posted on Twitter that she was donating all the money she got for that gig to charity. And it appears that the money went to a Canadian organization called Free the Children, the charity started by Craig Kielburger. The debate about accepting such blood money raged for months. These sorts of private gigs are more common than you may realize. I personally know someone who was once in the world of high-level event planning. These are professionals who specialize in privacy, discretion, and extremely rarefied circles. One day, I got an email from her. Someone whom she described as a wealthy Middle East VIP wanted some musical entertainment for a birthday party. I asked her what the budget was, and she said $1 million plus expenses. I can tell you this much about what happened. Elton John turned the gig down, but Lenny Kravitz took it. And for a short half-hour acoustic performance on the deck of a yacht moored in the harbor of an exotic port, he was paid $250,000. But this VIP was not a dictator, an oligarch, or a criminal. He just happened to be extremely rich. And extremely rich people can almost always get what they want. But let's go back to the really bad actors. Nelly Furtado wasn't the only person to be caught up in the world of private shows for dictators, oligarchs, and criminals. In fact, she wasn't the only one who took money from the Gaddafis. Just before midnight on April 14, 2006, a convoy of Mercedes-Benzes, Lexuses, buses loaded with special guests, and military vehicles rolled across the desert to Bab el-Azizia military barracks in the capital city of Tripoli in Libya. Guards opened the gates. Papers were checked. Security checks were done. Then they were waved inside as spotlights slashed across the night sky. The timing was very specific. April 15th had been declared Hana Peace Day by Gaddafi, an event commemorating the death of one of his daughters in a NATO bombing raid ordered by Ronald Reagan exactly 20 years earlier. And he wanted the party to start right at the stroke of midnight. About 1,000 people gathered around a stage to what was once Gaddafi's house before it was bombed. It had been left as a reminder of how the dictator had escaped death and continued to rule the country. On the stage was a grand piano, a variety of guitars, drums, and sound gear. A Spanish singer named Jose Carreras sang a short set. Then Aisha, another one of Gaddafi's beloved daughters, gave a short speech. And at the exact second the bombing had commenced 2 decades earlier, the lights dimmed, and Lionel Richie stepped on stage wearing a navy blue suit. The crowd went wild. "Hello, Libya!" he exclaimed. Then he played 5 of his biggest hits, ending with a sing-along featuring 40 children, all dressed in white. And at the end, he said, "Libya, I love you. I will be back." Well, of course he loved Libya. It said that he was paid $5 million for the show, or $1 million per song. And while he may have been seduced by the whole Hana Peace Day concept, the truth is that his appearance gave a certain type of legitimacy to the murderous Gaddafi regime. There's more. In 2005, 50 Cent was paid an undisclosed sum to play at a Gaddafi party at the Venice Film Festival. When this went public, he donated his fee to charity. On New Year's Eve 2008, the road along St. Jean's Beach on the French Caribbean island of St. Bart's was gridlocked. Everyone was heading to Nikki Beach, a club on the water that's a favorite of the rich and famous. The party's host was Motassem Gaddafi, also known as Hannibal. Tickets were not cheap. $12,000 per table. Stars like Jay-Z, Beyoncé's husband, John Bon Jovi, Lindsay Lohan, and Russell Simmons were in the crowd. Usher went on first. Then it was Beyoncé's turn. She performed 5 songs. Her fee? A reported $2 million. This is from a cell phone that night. Sorry about the audio, but it was really, really loud. How did Beyoncé and Usher end up playing for the son of a dictator? They were booked by a third-party promoter, keeping them at arm's length away from Hannibal Gaddafi. A year later, when the truth came out, both released statements saying that they were duped. Usher said, "I am sincerely troubled to learn about the circumstances surrounding the Nikki Beach St. Bart's event that took place on New Year's Eve 2009. I will be donating all my personal proceeds from that event to various human rights organizations." A spokesman for Beyoncé said, once it became known the third-party promoter was linked to them, the decision was made to put the payment to a good cause. Usher reportedly gave his fee to Amnesty International. Beyoncé gave her fee to a relief agency in Haiti, helping people recover from a devastating earthquake in 2010. Other rumored performers at still other private Gaddafi parties, including Timbaland, Enrique Iglesias, and Mariah Carey. Now, Mariah says she was duped too for a New Year's Eve show at the same St. Bart's Club in 2009, a year before the Beyoncé Usher gig. She got $1 million to sing 4 songs. That party was organized by another Gaddafi son, Saif al-Islam. At the time, Carey was only one of 22 people that he followed on Twitter. When she found out 3 years later, again, like everyone else, she claimed not to have known where the money was coming from, she released a statement about how embarrassed she was. "I feel horrible and embarrassed to have participated in this mess. I was naive and unaware of who I was booked to perform for. Going forward, this is a lesson for all artists to learn from. We need to be more aware and take more responsibility, regardless of who books our shows. Ultimately, we as artists are to be held accountable." Mariah Carey did not give the money back. Instead, she promised to donate money from a future single to charity, and we're really not sure what happened with that. This wasn't the only time Mariah Carey took money from a dictator, and it happened after the Gaddafi fiasco. In 2013, she played a concert for President José Eduardo dos Santos of Angola. He came to power 30 years earlier after a very bloody civil war. He was known to be very brutal. There's one story about how a couple of army veterans who were protesting his highly corrupt and very brutal government, they were kidnapped, tortured, and then they were fed to the crocodiles. Dos Santos' daughter, the richest woman in Africa, organized everything. Mariah pocketed about $1 million for a show that featured 3 costume changes, including a Santa suit for her rendition of All I Want for Christmas Is You. Angola is a country where the majority of the population lives on $2 a day. During the show, she said, "I'm honored to share this show with the president of Angola." And Mariah wasn't the only person to cozy up to Angola's politicians. Nicki Minaj has too. And did I mention that Dos Santos' daughter was accused of a massive money laundering scheme in 2020? Outraged yet? Just wait. I have more stories of musicians, dictators, oligarchs, and criminals. Not all musicians who have performed for evil people have done so willingly. Back in the 1920s, Fats Waller was a huge name in American jazz. One of his biggest fans was Chicago gangster Al Capone. Al's birthday was January 17th, and some of his associates thought it would be fun if they presented Fats Waller to Capone as a gift. So they kidnapped him. It was a 3-day non-stop party, and Waller had to play most of the time. When it was over, he was found exhausted and very drunk. But he was well compensated for his time. He was treated well with lots of food and booze, and he left with thousands of dollars in cash, mostly from tips from people at the party. But Waller's case is the exception. Everyone else we're talking about did deals with the devil. Human rights? What human rights? As long as the money's good. Let's go through a few more. In 2013, Jennifer Lopez traveled to Turkmenistan, one of the most repressive and goofy countries in the world. Its official name is the Turkmen Soviet Socialist Republic as part of the Great Socialist Soviet Union. There is extreme poverty. Citizens have almost no contact with the outside world. Government is built around a cult of personality. It has an abysmal human rights record. In fact, the organization Human Rights Watch calls Turkmenistan one of the world's most repressive countries. Under President Saparmurat Niyazov, the country's first leader after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, referred to himself as Turkmenbashi, which translates as the father of all Turkmen, and he declared the following. TV presenters were banned from wearing makeup. Car radios were banned because he considered them useless. You couldn't even smoke in your car because that was banned too. It was prohibited to report on diseases like AIDS because if there was no reporting, there was no problem. He didn't like gold teeth, recommending that people chew on bones to strengthen their enamel. Doctors had to give up the Hippocratic Oath and instead swear an oath to him. No video games, all banned. Lip syncing at concerts, banned. Bread, yes, everyday bread, was renamed Gurban Sultan, which was the name of his mother. He renamed the days of the week and the months of the year after his favorite Turkmen heroes. No dogs were allowed in the capital city. All hospitals outside the capital were closed. If you were sick, you had to travel. Women and girls could be subject to virginity tests by state authorities. No religious freedom, and don't even ask about freedom of the press or expression. That went nicely with a giant gold statue of himself that rotated throughout the day, so it always faced the sun. When he died of a heart attack in 2006, he was succeeded by Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, who was weird and dangerous in his own way. Black cars were banned in favor of white cars. Why? Well, because they brought good luck. He's obsessed with horses and dogs. Not necessarily a bad thing. And Berdimuhamedov also fancies himself to be a singer and a rapper who often performs on national television, which, by the way, is required viewing. Let me give you a sample.
Here is a poem and flowers and trees. Here is a music and mountains and sea. Beautiful sights of rivers and sky. All other beauties in Turkmenistan.
Deryatı coşkunlu, bağları vasfan. Belent başı dağ değil, yürük asman. Gülleyen, güleşen, yedi diyarım. Aydın sağlar yurdu, can Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan, Turkmenistan.
But remember, as goofy as that is, Turkmenistan is still a dangerously weird place. It's one of the top 10 least visited countries on the planet, right up there with North Korea and Eritrea. Reporters Without Borders ranks Turkmenistan as 177th out of 179 countries when it comes to press freedom. There were stories about journalists being involuntarily committed to psychiatric facilities. When it comes to artistic freedom, two very popular local singers were thrown in jail in 2011 when they appeared on Turkish television doing something Berdimuhamedov did not like. All that explanation is a preamble to this. Saturday, June 29th, 2023, was Berdimuhamedov's 56th birthday, and he wanted a party for himself. With the help of the China National Petroleum Corporation, a private event was arranged for a resort in the city of Avaza on the coast of the Caspian Sea that had been constructed at a price of $2 billion. In attendance was a select group of officials, diplomats, and cronies. Jennifer Lopez was flown in. She appeared on stage in a skimpy outfit, something that would have had a regular Turkmen citizen thrown in jail. And she shouted from the stage, "Turkmenistan!" She sang her hits, danced, and then changed into a traditional Turkmen outfit to perform Happy Birthday for the president, concluding with, "It was our pleasure, and we wish you the very happiest birthday." And for that, she was paid $1.4 million. When word of the show reached Western media, the blowback was considerable. Lopez's people responded that they'd not known anything about Turkmenistan's reputation or the brutality of its government. They said that she had merely accepted an invitation from the Chinese National Petroleum Corporation. No one thought to look into a gig in a place where no Western artist had ever gone before? Human Rights Watch was extremely critical and very, very harsh about Lopez's trip. The Western press was not kind, and Lopez refused to comment on the gig, saying, "I don't like to talk politics, to be quite honest." There was a performance for an Uzbekistan oligarch for a fee of $1 million, and she was paid $1.4 million for a show organized by an oligarch in Azerbaijan in honor of his son's wedding. This guy was later blamed for 2 murders of business rivals in Moscow and exiled to Montenegro. Not the greatest people. Lopez also performed in Macau, the Chinese territory, in 2014. It was another birthday party. A very wealthy Chinese family paid her $1.25 million for a 40-minute set with half a dozen dancers performing to a backing track. There were 20 people in the audience. It's estimated that Jennifer Lopez has made around $10 million over the years doing these gigs. Other people to perform for unsavory people, including Christina Aguilera, who was paid $2 million in 2005 to sing at the wedding of a Russian billionaire, Andy Melnichenko, who made most of his money from fertilizer and coal. He was later sanctioned by the European Union. His $500 million yacht was seized. In 2008, Tina Turner and Deep Purple both played a Gazprom show, Gazprom being the giant Russian oil company. In 2009, George Michael was paid $3 million to play at a New Year's Eve party for Vladimir Putin, another Russian oligarch, who at the time was the richest man in the country next to Vladimir Putin. And it's not just pop stars taking these jobs. In 2010, Guns N' Roses was hired to play a private gig for Gazprom, that giant Russian energy company. The venue was a movie studio complex in Russia. The guy writing the check was Alexander Chistakov, who worked for the Federal Grid Company, the largest state-run electrical transmission company in Russia. That same year, Sting performed a secret concert in Uzbekistan for the daughter and heir of brutal dictator Islam Karimov. She had been vilified for using forced child labor and has been accused of being involved in siphoning off money from the country's natural resources sales into the family coffers. Karimov came to power in 1989. He locked up thousands of people who dared question his rule. He had his troops fire on protesters, and has even been accused of boiling alive his political opponents. Sting's reaction? Let me quote you from the Guardian newspaper. I am well aware of the Uzbek president's appalling reputation in the field of human rights, as well as the environment. I made the decision to play there in spite of that. I have come to believe that cultural boycotts are not only pointless gestures, they are counterproductive, where prescribed states are further robbed of the open commerce of ideas and art, and as a result become even more closed, paranoid, and insular. How much did he make? About £2 million, or 2.7 million US. Sting went to Moscow in 2016 to play the wedding of Saeed Gusariev, the son of Mikhail Gusariev, a billionaire under Western sanctions, after the invasion of Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea in 2014, and after Russia shot down Malaysian Airlines Flight 27 over eastern Ukraine. That wedding, which also included an appearance by, oh, guess who, Jennifer Lopez, cost a reported $500 million. The wedding cake was 12 feet tall, and all the guests received parting gifts of jewel-encrusted boxes. In 2017, while Russia was eating away at Ukraine's eastern borders, Elton John and Mariah Carey were the entertainment at the wedding of the granddaughter of Russian billionaire Valery Kogan, the co-owner of Moscow's Domodedovo International Airport. But among the biggest and most regular oligarch parties were held by Roman Abramovich. He's Russian but has lived in Israel for many years and has a fortune somewhere around $10 billion. After the Soviet Union collapsed at the end of 1991, Abramovich, a former governor of an obscure region in Russia's Far East, sucked up a lot of state-owned assets, largely in the oil and gas sector, under, shall we say, dubious circumstances. There was one auction, a rigged thing, where he bought a company for $250 million and then sold it back to the Russian government for $13 billion. A lot of his money was invested in the West in things like technology, many with music partners like David Guetta, Tiesto, Avicii, Nicki Minaj, will.i.am of the Black Eyed Peas, and Benny Andersson of ABBA. He also bought Chelsea, the English Premier Football Club. The entire time he managed to stay on the good side of Vladimir Putin, but like all oligarchs, he probably had to give Putin a taste of his revenues. But back to music. In 2008, he paid Amy Winehouse $2 million for an intimate show at Garage, an art gallery in Moscow owned by his partner Dasha. In 2014, he brought in singer Robbie Williams. Williams enjoyed himself so much at that Moscow show in front of about 100 people that he wrote a song called Party Like a Russian.
It takes a certain kind of man with a certain reputation to alleviate the cash from a whole entire nation. Take my loose change and build my own space station.
And then there were Abramovich's New Year's Eve shows. In 2010, he spent $90 million on a prime lot of land on St. Bart's, that French Caribbean island for the rich and famous. This land, 70 acres nestled on Gouverneur Beach, the best spot on the island, and once owned by the Rockefeller family, now features multiple villas and amenities. I've stood outside his gates and peered down from the road above. The road down to the beach used to be nearly impassable and required a four-wheel drive. Now it's this beautiful road with stone guardrails and a tasteful parking lot at the bottom, a parking lot that's right outside the gate of the compound and just at the entrance to the beach. To get permission for such a massive development, he invested millions upon millions in the infrastructure of this 8-square-mile island. roads, services, a soccer stadium, and more. When his villa compound was ready, he began hosting the most lavish New Year's Eve parties you can possibly imagine. Rupert Murdoch, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Harvey Weinstein, Martha Stewart, Leo DiCaprio, Ellen DeGeneres, and many, many others were invited over the years. They feasted on things like caviar blinis and the finest wine and alcohol. And at midnight, a fireworks display that's so big it can actually be seen from neighboring islands. This is not an exaggeration because I have seen it from a distance. A typical Abramovich New Year's Eve event featured 400 guests and cost somewhere around $7 million. All the villas on the island were booked at hundreds of thousands of dollars per week. Guests fluttered back and forth to his yacht, Eclipse, which is almost 550 feet long and features multiple swimming pools, 2 helipads, and a submarine. Naturally, for a party this big with this many A-listers, the entertainment has to measure up. And over the years, music has come from Kings of Leon, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Gwen Stefani, Beyoncé, Black Eyed Peas, and even Prince. Here's some of that. In 2017, The Killers were the featured performers. In the crowd that night was Paul McCartney. So he got up on stage with them and jammed a little.
Helter Skelter! Helter Skelter! Oh, yeah. Helter Skelter!
Needless to say, a Russian oligarch pays very, very well for the entertainment at his parties. High 6 figures and well into 7 figures. Again, $7 million for one New Year's Eve party. And this on an island with less than 10,000 permanent residents. So no wonder the locals look the other way. Now, though, they can't. After Putin invaded Ukraine, Abramovich was sanctioned by countries around the world. His international business suffered. He had to sell his beloved Chelsea football club. And I haven't heard about a St. Bart's New Year's Eve party in quite some time. His villa complex is still there, but some other projects on the island connected to him have stopped. And it's not just Abramovich. For Western artists, all Russian oligarchs are radioactive and toxic because of the war in Ukraine. Managers and booking agents often get offers, but no one is willing to do gigs for big Russian money. Well, not that we know of anyway. There is one more category of gigs for dictators, oligarchs, and criminals, and it may surprise you. That's next. The optics of any musician taking dirty money from unsavory people to play a show are very, very bad. It sends the message that they'll do anything for a buck, regardless of who's signing the check. But what if the motivations are different than money? On Saturday, February 17, 2001, there was an interesting event at Teatro Karl Marx, a venue in Havana, Cuba. 5,000 people gathered not to hear another long-winded speech by Fidel Castro, but to see a gig by the Manic Street Preachers. Why? The band wanted to make a statement about the United States and its sanctions on Cuba. They also said they were making a statement about the commercialization of popular culture. Singer James Dean Bradford said, "Cuba is an example that everything doesn't have to be Americanized. Cuba, for me, is the last great symbol that really fights against the Americanization of the world." So how do they pull it off? With the help of a British politician who acted as a go-between with the band and the Cuban government. The Cubans realized that this would be a great propaganda victory, so they agreed to make it happen. Not only that, but Fidel himself was there, joining the band backstage before the show. It's unclear how the whole event was paid for, but the U.S. State Department was not happy. Here's how it sounded.
Just give me some of that rock and roll music. Hey, when you use it, it's got a back.
So did the Manics make a political statement? Did they engage in a meaningful exchange of culture? Or were they just useful idiots for Fidel Castro? That debate has gone on ever since. And the Manics were just the first. Audioslave wanted to make their own political statement, so they played a gig in Cuba in 2005. They took the opportunity to record a live album. Here's a bit of that. And again, the U.S. State Department was not amused.
Hey,
2014, a group called the Dead Daisies, featuring members of Guns N' Roses, INXS, and Thin Lizzy, played a cultural exchange show in Cuba. In 2016, Diplo and Major Lazer did a show in front of the U.S. Embassy. The gig also featured local DJs. And then, a few weeks after that, the Rolling Stones played a gig in front of 450,000 locals in Havana. They shot a concert film, too, entitled Havana Moon. Another shot at the U.S. State Department. Who else has played in Cuba? Billy Joel, Chris Christopherson, Rita Coolidge, and Stephen Stills. Now that you've heard all these stories, what would be the most unlikely place and the most brutal place a Western band could possibly play? If you said North Korea, you would be right. In August 2015, Laibach, a metal band from Slovenia, became the first ever Western rock band to play in the most isolated and weirdest country in the world. The gig was organized by a Norwegian film director and was held in the Ponghwa Theater in Pyongyang. They, however, did not play any original material. Instead, they performed some Beatles songs, 3 songs from The Sound of Music, which is a big favorite for teaching English in North Korea, and a traditional Korean folk song. Everything was captured in a film called Liberation Day.
We rise, we grow, we walk and we stand tall, we never fall.
Again, this was couched as a cultural exchange visit. Okay, whatever, but it was certainly extremely weird. Here are a few more artists who have cozied up with bad people. In 1974, James Brown, B.B. King, and a few others performed at a festival honoring Mobutu Sese Seko in what was then known as Zaire. Seko would eventually embezzle $5 billion from his country. In 1984, Queen performed at Sun City, a whites-only resort in South Africa when the country was still under brutal apartheid. At the time, Nelson Mandela was still imprisoned on Robben Island. For a moment, everyone was aghast. But very quickly, that transgression was forgiven and forgotten, even after it spurred a protest song called Sun City, featuring Bruce Springsteen, Keith Richards, Run DMC, Bob Dylan, Joey Ramone, and others. In 2005, Michael Jackson got very friendly with Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamad Al Khalifa of Bahrain. He needed a place to go after being acquitted of 10 felony counts, including several child molestation, so the prince gave Jackson money to make an album there. But it never happened. 2013, Kanye West took home $3 million for playing at the wedding of the grandson of the dictator of Kazakhstan. 2018, Akon, Ludacris, and others did a club show in Equatorial Guinea. It was a birthday party for Teodoro Nguma Ubange Mange, the extremely corrupt son of the even more corrupt dictator of the country, who was a big fan of torture. State media has to refer to him as God. In a nation where the average monthly wage is about $400, this guy amassed a car collection featuring Lamborghinis, Bentleys, and Ferraris. He also had 2 of 30 Bugatti Veyrons ever produced. And when he tried to purchase another one, everything was seized by French police. Much of his other assets, all paid for by looting the treasury, were seized by the U.S. in 2014. It used to be that playing for vile people could be done in secret, but not anymore, now that these lucrative side hustles have been exposed. It's become a very, very career-threatening thing for anyone to try to make a lot of extra bucks this way. But money often talks loud enough so that people still might look the other way. If you have any questions or comments about anything you hear on this podcast, shoot me an email, alan@alancross.ca. We could also meet up on all the social media sites, along with my website, ajournalofmusicalthings.com. It's updated with music news and recommendations every day. And then there's my free newsletter that you should get. Oh, and please check out my other podcast, The Ongoing History of New Music, which deals with rock music at large. There are hundreds and hundreds of episodes that you can enjoy for free. See you next time for more stories of crime and mayhem in the music industry. Episodes arrive every 2 weeks. Technical productions by Rob Johnston. I'm Alan Cross.